Welcome back to the Fanspeak Network and another episode of Sibling Showdown, another strategy edition. This time we are talking about rookie receivers. We've covered running backs, we've covered quarterbacks and tight ends, and today we're covering rookie receivers. So this will help in your big board drafts. We'll get to that in just 1 minute. That's right. Sibling Showdown strategy. Each week we'll cover different topics. The past couple of weeks we've covered rookie class. It's important to these big board drafts to know how to handle these rookies. And I've got the right person to do it. My brother, Steve, he's scouted for well over a decade. He's covered the Senior Bowl 2012 to 2020. He knows rookies. He had success with rookies in the big board. Last year, he finished 4th place for 50K, and he's going to help us with rookies again. So again, check out the quarterback and tight end show. Check out the running back show already on the channel. And then now you'll have receiver. And guess what? We'll do this all again after the landing spots happen after the NFL draft. But hopefully you find this helpful for your big board drafts. Steve, how are you doing today? And you ready to talk some rookie receivers?
Doing good. And yeah, absolutely ready to talk some rookie receivers. It's not, last year's class, but what could be. And I still think there's plenty of value out there, and we'll find some guys to help us out.
Well, you just kind of led me into my next question is kind of contextualize this class for us, because last year was insane. It was an insanely talented receiver class, both at the top and depth. And we knew that. And that kind of played out for whether it was in your big board drafts. Ladd McConkey was on your 4th place big board team, or your main classic drafts throughout the best ball season. Rookie receivers were key. They were key at various points in the draft, early, mid, and late. And yeah, they were a massive, massive strength last year. Not as strong a class as you said, but kind of give us some context to maybe comparing to other classes, or how you feel about this class as a whole before we go player by player.
Yeah, so this class is definitely different, not just from last year, but kind of some recent years. A little thinner overall. There's some upside guys who we'll see with the combine could boost their stock and pro days and things of that nature. But I do think I look back to a couple years ago where the Garrett Wilson and Drake London class, people really questioned with Jameson Williams getting injured, is there true number one in this class? And there's kind of a bit of a similar thing. I think there's 1 or 2 guys who, maybe 3, that we consider as potential number ones. But most of this class are like good number 2s or number 3 type receivers that can still add a lot of value, especially if the landing spots are right. And 2 years ago, so this is probably most comparable to 2 years ago, where we did have, I believe, 4 rookie receivers: Jordan Addison, JSN,
the 23 class then.
Quinton Johnson, and Flowers. Sorry. And then there was kind of a gap. And in the second round, you had Mingo, who was, did not pan out. And then Jaden Reed was kind of the guy who did pan out. But some of the other high-end guys like Jalen Hyatt went high, and Cedric Tillman. And Tillman much better second year, but, didn't do much as a rookie. This is probably better than that class. Not as good as the 22. And definitely not as good as last year's class. And
Quinton Johnson, a first-round pick. I mean, you've kind of called some raw receiver picks that you've been like, stay away from Trey Burke, stay away from Quinton Johnson. They're raw receivers coming out. Quinton Johnson had a much better year too, but he was not a hit his first year.
No, and he had the opportunity, unlike somebody like JSN, who kind of got buried with DK and Lockett. Quinton Johnson had the opportunity, particularly with Mike Williams going down like week 4 or 5, and then Keenan Allen later. So, and Josh Palmer missed a lot of time. So he had plenty of opportunity, just never was able to pan out.
Yeah. Okay. That helps us kind of think through the class. Like, cause again, if you think it's last year's class, unfortunately it's not, it's not going to be that strong, but we still can find, places to go here where we might get some value. I mean, obviously at the top, and we'll go through player by player, but, and before we go player by player, because Steve's rankings are on his rookie rankings, that is, are on fanspeak.com free. Check that out. His full big board rankings will be out by next week. We'll use it in we'll use it for the first time in a live draft next week, and it'll be available on fanspeak.com next week. So check that out next week. But, talking through, we'll go player by player, Steve, but talk about how some of these guys, I know there was a lot of hot receiver names at the Senior Bowl. A lot of those were more mid to late guys, but who from the Senior Bowl a couple of weeks ago really made a name for themselves that could, I'm guessing, go day 2, maybe early day 3, but could still make an impact in the NFL year 1, which is what we're looking for in big board drafts.
Yeah, probably the best name, the guy who made the best case for himself is Jack Beck, TCU receiver, kind of a late breakout his final year. He transferred from LSU. He was actually a tight end early in his career, but he's a receiver and he's a good one. He good size, 6'1", 215-ish, athletic, great route runner, catches everything thrown his way. We see him get vertical. We see his ability to catch contested balls. There's just he checks a lot of boxes across the board. And I think he's a guy who, particularly with his Senior Bowl, is probably going round 2 now. Maybe round 3 at worst, early round 3 at worst, but I think he's really kind of in that 50 to 70 range. Maybe even a little higher, again, if the combine and he can keep building. I think he's a guy who helped himself. I think Jaden Higgins helped himself, Jalen Royals. These are, guys, good, Higgins, especially good size, probably not the most dynamic speed, but I think I like him to be either a big slot or a strong outside receiver, just a chain mover, guy who's just getting 15-yard chunk after 15-yard chunk. Really like his route running. He gets open. To me, there's just no question. He's just constantly open. We saw it at Iowa State this past year. Another guy who really helped himself, had a ton of clips favoring him, but Tez Johnson, Oregon.
Little guy, but
no question he's undersized, but he is explosive and he plays bigger than his size. And that's what
he looked uncoverable in some of the Senior Bowl clips.
That's what you like to see. Wouldn't mind seeing him add a little bit of weight, but he's 5'9", so there's some reports that had him maybe measuring at like 5'7", but 5'9" is very doable. And, reminds me of a little of a Santana Moss, that tough, 5'9" receiver, but he plays bigger than he is. And just tough, gets open, makes plays, can get vertical. He's got almost as good a speed as anyone in this class. So he could, probably, he's not going to run like Worthy did last year, but, if he runs a 4.35, something like that, look for him to be on some boards going forward.
Well, you and your Washington shirt, we're Washington fans. Santana Moss, that holds a dear place in my heart. So that could be nice. Jalen, the other guy from Iowa State.
Jalen Noel. Yeah, no, another guy, kind of 5'11", kind of a slot guy, could play a little outside, but yeah, he's a bit more explosive than Jaden Higgins, his Iowa State teammate. I think he is more of a high floor guy. Probably going to be a team's number 3 wide receiver at the next level. I think a third round, maybe 4th round guy. Reminds a little bit of a poor man's Jaden Reed, who I just mentioned is, who kind of performed in that role for the Packers, a primary slot, but can play outside, do a little of everything. The receiver class, and we'll talk about it as we go through, there's probably going to be about 5 first-rounders, and then there's 1 or 2 others I think are very interesting and kind of priority second-round guys. But then that next group, 9 to 19, 9 to 20, you honestly could order them almost any way you want. It depends on what you're looking for. And now for our purposes, fantasy purposes, some are different than others. Some have more ability to play early, etc. We'll get to them. But Eric Iomaner from Stanford, he could be the 6th receiver taken in this draft, but he's not going to be the 6th receiver I prioritize in best ball drafts because I think he's a very raw prospect.
I mean, so I just have to tout that you have nailed these are the raw guys, to the raw receivers that, may not make an impact right away. And it started with Traylon Burks, and then you said Quentin Johnson in his first year, and then you said this year Xavier Legette. I mean, Coker outplayed him. So I think draft capital does not always equal. Sometimes it does, but draft capital does not always equal the opportunity that will meet and then be fantasy success. So because it is kind of flat, and especially with these day 2, early day 3 guys, that's where we need to be careful and really pick our spots. Obviously, pre-draft, pre-landing spots, you're just leaning into talent and their potential role in the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where you need to be a little more wary of the ones that are super raw. So let's get into your rankings, which we'll talk player by player. We'll obviously spend a little more time on the players up top, a lot less time probably on the players at the bottom, but these are all the ones you can consider. And of course, it starts with the cover boy, Tet McMillan out of Arizona. Talk about him and how much you're taking him.
Yeah, Tet McMillan, Arizona, 6'5", 220. It's going to remind you of, cross between Mike Evans and Drake London, just big physical outside receiver, can play inside a little bit as well. I'll be interested to see how he runs, if he has Evans speed or if he kind of is pegged more in the Drake London type. Either way, doesn't matter. This guy can play. I think he's a big play guy, going to be a big red zone guy, given his size and skills, some jump ball ability. And, we got to keep in mind where Arizona's quarterback really took a step back this year. He actually knows a quarterback going back to high school, but so there was a connection there. But just the Arizona offense as a whole was way down this year. So his dominance and numbers this past year were with of many of these quarterback and many of the receivers we're talking about had just far superior quarterback play. Not all of them, and we'll get to that very shortly. But that's just one thing to keep in mind. Like we'll talk about, and he's challenging, and we'll like Travis Hunter, whether he's a receiver corner, we'll get to that discussion in a little bit. But he obviously played with Shedeur Sanders, who's going to go in the first round. McMillan did not play with an NFL caliber quarterback, so that's just that's something we need to keep in mind and look at. And McMillan did it against tough competition, weak competition, did it across the board. So yeah, I think he's a plug and play guy. He has number one upside at the very least. He's T. Higgins. He's a great number 2. So
nice.
And we'll need to see what his landing spot is, but whether he goes to a good landing spot, and becomes Drake May's number 1 receiver, or a weaker landing spot, and it, maybe he's replacing Devontae Adams for the Jets and Jets don't have a good quarterback, whatever. We'll see. But I think he's well worth drafting where he's going right now.
Well, that's the context matters. That was my next question. Going at ADP 50. So context is important for their quarterback, for their ADP and where we're taking him. He's going to ADP 50. I know I've scooped him up some. Are you going to be kind of with the field, above the field? How do you want to handle him in big board?
I want to be overweight, because I just think, he's going in, that late 4th, early 5th round, and I think he has the ability to be as good as many receivers in that range, if not better. And receivers going a round or 2 above him. So you and I have never been Zay Flowers drafters,
and Zay Flowers is going, 4 or 5 spots ahead of him. So
and McMillan, I don't care. He could go to the worst offense in the league, and he'll probably have more touchdowns than Zay Flowers. Is just the way it boils down to.
Yeah, and that's key, especially on Underdog where touchdowns are king. So, that takes us to the next one, who I know you like a lot. Didn't talk. Speaking of bad quarterback play, Missouri, Luther Burden had terrible quarterback play, but you really like this guy a lot, and I'll jump to get to his ADP in a minute. But I know from our conversations and our drafts, we just drafted him in a live draft. Go check that out. Our recent sibling showdown number 3 on the big board, we drafted Luther Burden. So talk about Luther Burden and how you're handling him in big board.
Yeah, Burden was one of the top receiver recruits when he came out to college a couple of years ago. He's from St. Louis, so he stayed in state, went to Missouri. Unfortunately, he just didn't have the quarterback play to pay off. 2 years ago, he had 1,400 yards. They really were able to get him involved, especially banged up a little bit. Quarterback play and total offense just fell off. He's a guy, he's that in that 5'10", 5'11" range. and gets comped. I comp him a lot too. I mentioned here Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore. The high end of that type of receiver is Malik Neighbors, a younger and healthier Stephon Diggs. But those receivers can play, and he can dominate in the slot. He can play outside. He's going to be big, run after the catch, get him the ball in space. Sure, you might need to throw a lot of screens and quick little slants and things like that, but he's a guy who's going to take a slant and take it 50 yards. I think his level of talent is nowhere clear to being maxed, and I don't think he'll be held back as a rookie. And what impresses me is a lot of times you're seeing him being mocked in the second half of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
He could go to a playoff team.
Right.
He could be Washington's number 2 receiver. He could go to, Denver or the Chargers or maybe the Bills. Maybe they trade up.
My goodness. Yeah.
So, just a lot of excitement for that possibility here as well. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how he runs. But right now, I think it's wheels up for Luther Burden.
All right. So his ADP is 75. I already know the answer to this question. You're going to be way overweight that.
Yeah, well overweight. I think his upside is much higher, particularly if he gets a nice landing spot.
Okay. Then let's go to number 3, Emeka Mbukwa. Did I say it right?
Yeah, we'll go with it.
Okay.
Ibukwa.
Ohio State, obviously, I know Ohio State, as you mentioned in the article, overshadowed by the younger big name receiver. But as you said in the article, it doesn't make him an unworthy prospect. So talk about Ibukwa and how you're handling him in big board.
Yeah, so he's an interesting guy because he's probably a guy who truly maxes as a number 2 receiver in the NFL, but a good one. He does everything well. Is not going to be elite in any area. Good size, runs routes well, catches the ball well. Just smart guy, gets open for his quarterback, but he's also maybe the most NFL ready guy. In part because he was at Ohio State. They have been producing pretty good receivers over the years. So yeah, I think he just comes in wherever he gets drafted in probably mid-late first round, and he's just ready to go as a team's number 2 receiver. With the right team, that could be extremely good. A middle team that could just be good. But I think he's above average. And what I like is his ADP is
80. Yeah.
80. And I think the receivers in that range, look at some of those names in that range. And you're talking about a lot of like number 2 type receivers.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to take shots on him. I believe he is, like I said, probably the most NFL ready wide receiver. And I'm not going to knock him that he played with, Marvin Harrison Jr. and the phenom freshman Smith this past year.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I'd say is he goes 5 picks after Burden, who you like. So I assume you're taking maybe more Burden, but you still want to get access to Ibukwa. Okay. Yeah. Again, context matters, and that's why we talk these things through. Number 4, Matthew Golden out of Texas. To talk a little bit about him. He's, I know, an interesting prospect and one that I'm trying to truly understand, everything about these prospects to know, again, like you said, pre-draft, not knowing landing spots, how they could potentially be used.
Yeah. So he is one of the best route runners in this class. Really gifted, had a great year at Texas after he transferred from Houston, led Texas in receiving, quickly became Quinn Ewers one of his favorite targets, even with missing, I believe, 1 or 2 games. And this is the issue, is he's another guy who kind of caps as a number 2 receiver. I just don't think he's going to ever be an elite number 1 guy. I think he's kind of a bit of a poor man's Ladd McConkey, who was a great route runner, and that really benefited him. McConkey I believe, probably has more speed. We definitely know McConkey has speed. I'm interested to see what Golden runs.
Yeah, which we'll find out soon here at the combine. In a couple weeks. Yeah.
But he's a guy, I think he's going late first round, maybe early second round. But so landing spot could end up being really nice, and could be the other reason why I end up prioritizing him a little bit more. Right now, as I kind of said on this, I'm going to be at least with the field. And, as we get closer to the draft and we kind of get a a better sense of what these like playoff teams, especially with really good quarterbacks, and even a team like the Chiefs, they're Rice coming off a major injury, Hollywood and Juju free agents. They could look at another first round Texas rookie receiver. So,
yeah, worked with Worthy. Yeah, well, you mentioned about like who's going around. I mean,
yeah.
his ADP is 98. He's going around a lot of guys that are coming off injuries or aging. Cooper Kupp, Rashid Shaheed, Stephon Diggs, Darnell Mooney, Michael Pittman. Guys that for some of these guys at one times were, absolutely wide receiver ones, but now we're not so sure. So are you taking Golden more than them, about the same as them? How are you handling him in the context of where he's going around? And so you basically said you're going to be kind of with the field, maybe getting that like 8-9% of them.
So I think in that area, because I want shots on some of those guys, even the guys coming off injuries like Diggs and Shaheed, because they can absolutely still pay off. I kind of want to be around the field on a lot of those guys. Mm-hmm. So that's why Golden is, but the point is yes, he's younger.
Yeah.
He might end up with the best landing spot of that group because some of those guys are free agents or, like Shaheed, we have no idea who the Saints quarterback is going to be.
We know the coach now, but
yeah, we know the coach. And like Pittman, it's just, what's that quarterback situation? It's just not great. So,
not good.
So Golden is a guy I'm going to at least be with the field on and maybe push higher, particularly if he stays in that area.
Okay, I like that. Trey Harris, Mississippi. Give us some background on him and how you're handling him.
So Harris is one of my favorite receivers in this draft, but I think he's likely to go in the second round. I think he's got one of the higher upsides. I do think he dominated Mississippi this year, got injured. And so he didn't play in some of their biggest games. You would have, of course, loved to have seen that. But when he was on the field, this guy caught everything thrown his way. He's got a tremendous catch radius, seems to get open, not the purest of route runners, but good enough, good speed, really nice size. Like I said, aggressive catcher, catches it and turns upfield and just makes big splash plays. It's been hit or miss with these old, Mississippi receivers. Guys like DK Metcalf and AJ Brown were incredible. Elijah Moore kind of in between, and then Jonathan Mingo not so great. So it's tough because the system is not the most NFL receiver friendly, but talent's talent, and I just think the upside is there. He is a guy that I would not be projecting. What we hear every year, the post-buy rookie bump. The difference between him and like in Mbukwa or in Golden is I think those guys can go into their roles week one and maybe be producing for you. Harris is probably a guy who, even if he is inserted as the number 2 receiver on a team, might take a few weeks to just learn the NFL game because it's a different game than what he played in college.
But I mean, you said in the article he has the most upside out of McMillan, Hunter, and Burton. So that's interesting.
Yeah, he's the guy who a couple years from now could be number 1, and reminds me some of AJ Brown.
I was just going to ask if you had an NFL comp. That's always just fun. Not that you're saying he's going to be this guy, but that's always fun. AJ Brown, that would be a hell of a. But like you said, it could take a while to get there. But I assume you don't feel like him as you do Ioman, or however you pronounce the guy out of Stanford. Like you don't put him in the same context of, oh, he might need a whole year. You're saying he might need half the season or something like that.
Yeah, and I think landing spot will be key, of course, but. I think if you're patient, I just see him developing quickly. These last couple of years, he really was exciting and fun to watch in college, and so that skill set's there, that talent's there, and he did in the SEC. Iowa Manor did it versus some weaker competition. And no, granted, Harris has much better quarterback play with Jackson Dart than Iowa Manor ever had at Stanford, but. So it's not a 1v1 comparison of the two, but I just see Harrison every time I see him, I'm impressed, and I just see the upside. I see the translatable potential for the NFL level.
Well, and his ADP is 127. Just to give you context, who he's going around, a very aging Keenan Allen, but who still produced this year. Hollywood Brown, who, nothing special when he came back from injury. Xavier Legette, does he make the jump year 2? Christian Kirk coming off injury. So, the guys he's going around, you can certainly make a case that you like him the best, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to our talk a couple of picks ago with Golden, is he's younger and healthier than all those guys.
Yeah.
And just the upside is real. I truly think he's got one of the highest upsides in this class, and similar to AJ Brown, who was a second round pick. And even at first, people thought DK Metcalf was better than AJ Brown as rookies. Now nobody's saying that. Not a knock on DK, but AJ Brown is one of the top 10 receivers in the league. No question about it. So not saying Harris is going to become that, but right off the bat, but the upside is there for him.
Yeah. And you say in the article that, you will be higher on him than the field. So I assume you're going to be, way more than the field as far as your exposure. Okay. That takes us to Jaden Higgins, who we briefly talked about as a riser in the Senior Bowl, but talk about him as a prospect. And I know you have him ranked higher than a lot of guys, again, context matters in these rankings, guys that are going much earlier than him. He's going much later. We just got him in a live draft in the 15th round or something like that.
Yeah, we actually didn't get him, but we made Jalen Knoll. But
we got Jalen Knoll. Sorry, you're right. We talked about getting them. We did not get him. I apologize, but yes, he's going much later, and you have him ranked much higher. So break it all down for us.
So what I like about him is I think he's probably a second round pick, maybe third round pick at worst. But he's one of the more NFL ready receivers. I feel like I think his size translates, his hands and route running translate. I think his red zone role translate and is also could be a fantasy calling card for him, and why I like him over some other receivers, because he's the type of guy who, again, probably most of these guys will be number 2 receivers at the NFL level, but he's going to have 7 to 10 touchdowns. Some of these other guys might have 4.
Yeah.
So he could end up getting you quite a few more fantasy points. Is how I look at it. I will be interested to see how his athletic testing is. Some people question it. It looks fine when you watch him on tape. He dominates pretty much most weeks, so I'm not too concerned about it. And like I said, I think he's very NFL ready.
Yeah, and seeing the Senior Bowl clips on, what jumped out to me was his size. I mean, just like you said in the article, big physical receiver. Any fun NFL comp that you have for him?
I think the high end is Drake London, the guy who, just constantly getting 15-yard chunks here and there.
Yeah. And a good red zone threat too.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be kind of the high end comp for him.
Well, the key here in your rankings and where, you can kind of just make a big stand, especially in these big board drafts, because I know someone asked us this question in the live draft is, guys at ADP 100 plus, kind of how do you handle your stands on them comparatively to the regular season best ball season, after draft. And for me, and I think, and you said this similarly, is if you have a big stand on a player, 100 plus, ADP, that don't be afraid to lean into that, whether it's a rookie or a vet. If you're confident that they can make an impact, as for a rookie, an impact and can have a strong role, obviously landing spot will matter. But if you're confident, I know you felt that way about Ladd McConkey last year, and look how that paid off. And we did not know he got then we loved it because we were like, okay, he's clearly going to be the Chargers wide receiver 1, but still you before that, you were so bullish on him. And it feels that way with a guy like Higgins, who could, like you said, likely a second round pick. So, that's key to just be listen, you have him, he's ADP 188. You have him as your 6th receiver in this class. That means you're likely going to be way over the field.
Yeah. No. And that's, like you said, the fact that his ADP is so low, I think it's criminal right now.
Yeah.
Maybe it bumps up some after the combine.
Because it bumped up a little after the Senior Bowl, right?
Yeah. And we'll see, maybe when you get into end of March, April, and all these mocks start doing more 2
round,
second and third round mocks as well. And people start seeing that he's going end of the second round, early third round, then he might get on people's radar. So right now I'm taking him quite a bit. If his ADP bumps up 50 spots, I'm not going to necessarily keep taking him as much. I like him. I still think he'd be a fine value there.
Yeah.
But right now, it's, to me, a criminal steal.
Yeah. And
I want
especially,
a good chunk of him.
yeah, especially at ADP in the 180s, like,
Yeah.
you know, hopefully that does work out, but the risk then goes way down. So yeah, that's why in these pre-drafts, especially 20 rounds, we're taking the swings on some of these rookies and not afraid to be way overweight. And Jaden Higgins seems like one of them. Okay, let's go to the next one. Very unique situation. Very, very unique. We don't see this really at all. So Deion Sanders was, can you think of another guy outside of Deion that we've seen in the last couple?
I mean, a couple of guys have done a little two-way. Charles Woodson played a little two-way.
Okay,
Bailey here and there, but
yeah.
it's so rare. The Hunter, what's interesting is he's almost surely the first name off the board because he plays two ways, and he arguably is the top receiver in this class.
That's so interesting.
Him or Tet are 1-2. So as a pure receiver, and if I knew he was playing receiver, I would probably have him behind Tet, but I would absolutely have him ahead of Burton.
Okay.
The problem is he is not necessarily 100% receiver. He says he wants to play both full-time, but what does full-time mean?
Yeah.
Is that 70% both? Is that 90% one, 70% the other?
Yeah.
And if so, does it go to the receiver? The tough thing, when we talked about Tet, mentioned, like, regardless of the landing spot, he should be pretty good. But landing spot is different. I'm going to like him way more in New England, and I'm going to like him on the Jets. Right now, we're just rolling the dice.
Yeah.
Not only are we rolling that dice with Travis Hunter, where he could, the Titans could take him, and he could be the number 2 receiver for an unknown quarterback behind Ridley, or he could go to, the Browns and have a terrible quarterback situation, but be viewed more as a full corner.
Yeah.
So we just don't know. I mean, Patriots would obviously be a nice landing spot. One, because I think since they need receivers so much, he might have better odds of being a 90% guy there.
Right.
What I will say is, where's ADP's at now? Around 100, a little around 100.
Yeah, 117 currently.
Yeah. I'm fine taking him there because even if he's a 60, 70% guy, maybe he does enough there to at least get you some good weeks. He won't be an every week producer, but if he's your 5th receiver, that's fine. And if he ends up being an 80, 90, 95% receiver, you're getting a massive steal no matter what quarterback's throwing him the ball.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that was my next question, is how much have you taken, or how much are you planning to continue to take him if he stays in this ADP pocket around 117?
So without any more clarification from Combine and stuff, and here's the thing, the tough thing is,
we might get a little more clarification.
It's not just going to be the Combine, because it's really going to come down to, look, he's going to be making a deal with whatever coaching staff gets him. And, when he interviews at the Combine, he says he's going to tell teams he wants to play both ways. I believe that.
Yeah.
Some coaches might totally acquiesce and allow that, but others might kind of steer him in one direction. We're not going to get, he's going to probably test as both and do exceedingly well. So I don't think we'll get clear knowledge until after the draft, and that's going to be the first question. Whoever drafts him, what is he?
Right, because he's likely going to be a top 5 pick, right?
I think he's a top 5 pick, regardless, just because he can do both, and he's a very good receiver and a very good corner. And I think it comes down to what team needs, if he plays one more than the other.
Guys, it seems like he'd be a great fit for the Patriots, and that would be something that we would like a lot paired with Drake May. So, and I guess maybe it is like you do wish cast a little bit when you're, drafting these rookies, but you do think, oh my gosh, if they got this spot, which we do need to be open to all the range of outcomes. And by the way, we will start, showing On the Clock Mock Draft Simulator. We've been running it since 2013, one of the first mock draft simulators out there. We'll start running some simulations, whether it's a strategy show or to start off our live drafts, to show the different landing spots and show if you run this draft 10 times, these are the different landing spots that Travis Hunter could get. And then what does that mean? And, so no, I think all that is very, very interesting. But I've been taking him some too, because again, it still is not high enough that it feels like a massive risk, basically.
Yeah. And who are some of the receivers being taken around him? And, I think you're talking, again, some guys who are questionable, either age, situation,
Yeah, he's going
injury.
around, I mean, I do like Bateman, kind of right above him. Then there's Keon Coleman. I like Marvin Mims, but then it's like right around that Trey Harris area with
Yeah.
Keenan Allen, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Legette, Christian Kirk. So yeah, right above. Like I like him like above most of those guys outside of like maybe Mims and
Mhm.
Trey Harris, who we just talked
But
about.
here's the thing: even Bateman and Mims, if Hunter is a 90% guy, he's almost assuredly outproducing those types of guys by a
Yeah.
considerable margin.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And I think it's a point that, like, again, when we're looking at these landing spots and range of outcomes, that's what we're talking about in these pre-draft contests and drafting these rookies is the range of outcomes. I think so many people just think, the fear factor or the bear case, like, well, what if he barely plays, receiver, or I'm drafting a cornerback in best ball. Like, okay, that would be the worst case scenario. But, again, best case scenario is he's going what, 70, 60, 70 spots after Tet McMillan and a comparable receiver. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the bull case. So, you have to look at both sides of this. And again, the guy who won best ball or big board last year had 10 rookies. You had like what, three rookies on your team that finished fourth. Like there's no magic number, but with 20 rounds, you can take swings. And he's a guy that I'm definitely willing to take a swing on.
Yeah. So the final thing I'd say with him is when I typically draft him, I have like at least 3 guys I feel very good about their roles, their situations with, not even talking like the Chris Godwins. I'm talking about guys who are like locked into their roles with good quarterback play or above average quarterback play. So make sure you draft right for him, probably taking at least 8, 9 receivers and having some certainty around him. So if he's a miss, it's not going to kill you.
It's not going to kill you. Yeah. No, that's an excellent point because some of these guys, the swings you take on them, it's who you're taking them with. So, that's an excellent point. Okay, let's go on to the next one. And this name I know raised up your board after the Senior Bowl, after you watch more Senior Bowl tape, and that's Jalen Royals of Utah State. You talked about him when we talked about Senior Bowl, but talk about him a little bit more and how you're handling that.
Yeah, so he definitely, smaller school guy, but he impressed me at the Senior Bowl, impressed me just watching him more. He gets open and he makes plays, and I think he's a little bit more refined than I initially gave him credit for. Like I said, he's very consistent and a safer prospect. Again, caps out no higher than a number 2 receiver, probably even maybe even number 3 receiver as a rookie. But I think he hits the ground running. Will probably be at the end of the second, early third round. So, could get a pretty decent role as a rookie because there's, he's more of a floor play, but I think it's a strong floor and a ceiling. I'm not going to necessarily be overweight, but I'm fine being around the field for him.
Because he's going in the 180s, just exactly. Again, contacts, ADP contacts, he's going in the 180s.
And if he moves up considerably, maybe be underweight. And so where he's going now, I might even end up overweight because it is so late. But if I presume he'll start to move up a little bit. But he's a guy I want exposure to because I'm not going to be surprised if he is just producing as a rookie.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next one is someone that you've kind of gone a little lower on since the big board open. Because I remember when the big board opened, you talked high of Isaiah Bond. I drafted him a little bit. And then not that you're down on him, but you just, it doesn't seem like, I think you ranked him a little lower than I expected that you would. But Isaiah Bond of Texas, talk about him.
Yeah. So, Bond came over from Alabama. One of the fastest guys in this class, might be the fastest. We'll see in a couple of weeks. So kind of similar to Xavier Worthy, Texas receiver. I think he's probably running 4.3s. But the problem, he doesn't have a ton of nuance. He could use some more route running. I do think his speed will play. I think his speed will keep him probably in the second, third round at worst. And I think his speed could help him find a role early in the NFL. I just think he's a guy who he'll have some spike weeks, but he'll be highly inconsistent week to week, is my guess as a rookie. Long term, he could be very good.
Right.
That speed's legit. But as a rookie, I'm going to hope that he lands on a team with a big arm quarterback. But No, as we saw with Xavier Worthy, speed kills,
Mhm.
in the Super Bowl, and that could be Bond as well, but it's going to be hit or miss. Where he's going, he's fallen a little bit.
He's in around the 150s because, yeah, he was
Yeah.
going higher, and I took him some then, and now I see he's in the
So
150s. And
I'm kind of more back on board. When he was in the 120-ish range, I started to doubt myself, but now that's a couple rounds later, kind of back on board. But again, I think you build correctly to ensure that he doesn't hurt you.
yeah,
Make sure you have a lot of certainty at your receiver position, and then have him as your spike week guy, the guy who comes in and catches 3 for 90 and 1 or 2 touchdowns.
yeah, yeah,
That time of year.
and like you said, he's going to need the right quarterback to really pay off.
Yeah.
The upside too. So, and you made a good point. You may want to take shots on him now before the combine because he could raise because of the speed element. Yeah.
Yeah, because if he goes out and runs a 4.3, even with all the questions on his game, he's going to go higher in these drafts.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we talked about Jack Beck, but go ahead, kind of round it out and how you're handling him. You talked about how great of a Senior Bowl week he had. I believe you said he was like the best wide receiver at the Senior Bowl, caught the game-winning touchdown, was Senior Bowl Player of the Week. So, but obviously you liked him as a prospect, but liked him even more at the Senior Bowl. You go ahead and round out, how you're handling Jack Beck.
Yeah, and honestly, he's a guy I might even be moving up higher because I think he's got one of those skill sets that will play early. His route running is very strong. His hands are very good. He won't ever be number one again, but I think he can, for a lot of teams, he could really push to play.
And going 196 right now, is he another one that you're just trying to take before the combine?
Yeah, and he's already risen up a couple rounds from the Senior Bowl, but I'm still taking him. I think any guy you're getting 16, 17, 18th round, that kind of range, fantastic value for a guy like this. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him more as a second round NFL receiver, mid to late second round.
Yeah,
maybe falls to the third, but yeah, and I think he's the guy who a lot of teams, when they draft him, he will earn a starting role very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So definitely wheels up on taking a lot of Jack Beck, especially now, but especially around this ADP in the 190s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, that's important because again, always context matters and how we handle it in big board. That's the whole point of doing this. So that was the first 10. Now we'll go a little faster through the rest of them. Tez Johnson, Oregon, number 11. I know had a great Senior Bowl. We talked about him, small but fast. You talked about comparing him to, well, I know people have comped him to Tank. I just blanked on the last name. Tank Dell. But you kind of compared him to Washington, the former Redskin, Santana Moss. So, talk about how he's another one that's going really late. Yeah. So how do you handle it?
As I mentioned him later, like he's got speed, he's tough, he's good, great route runner. You want to see him add 15 pounds. 156 is extremely light, but he is 5'9" and a quarter, which is an inch or two above what most people thought. So that's good. And honestly gives his frame more to add that weight and not be much of a factor. So we'll see how he runs at the combine. Could be another guy who just really flies. But he really shows he can be a very strong route runner, good hands, and yeah, just tough guy. Probably mainly a slot guy, but yeah, another guy, as I mentioned, after we got past these first like 8-9 guys, you could order these any way you want, and we'll see how the NFL likes them. But that's why I want to take kind of a scatter shot of these guys and get some exposure, because some are going to end up with really nice landing spots.
Right. So yeah, like the guys like Jack Beck and I know there's some Hunter and Jaden Higgins that seem to be going way too late. You're taking a lot of, like you said, these next 11 through 20 some are going to go all different kind of scattered. It could be scattered throughout second, third, fourth round for NFL teams. And they're therefore, some are going to move up in big board ADP, some may not. But are you basically having a more spread out, even approach, like kind of with the field on a lot of these guys, or how Tez Johnson
even under the field? I don't necessarily need to be at 8%, but if I'm at 5%, I'm happy. I just don't want to totally fade these types of guys because some are going to land right.
Right. So landing spot. So basically, the 11 on these landing spots are really going to matter for them. So probably not how you felt about a lot of the first 10 that you want to be, overweight. It's more like you said, you might be a little underweight, but you don't want to totally fade. So maybe like a 5%. Okay, that helps give good context. Yeah. And I like the NFL kind of the comps for Tez Johnson. So Savion Williams, he was at TCU. He was one that I know you said was more raw, but then said he could have, a big upside because of his rushing game. So speak to that a little more and then how you're truly handling him in the draft.
Yeah. I mean, he's actually a good runner and, but he's big. He's like 6'3", 220, whatever. So he's not your typical running back size. And so you'd love to see him be able to stick and do things at the receiver spot and use that size in the red zone as well. But give him 5 to 8 carries a game. Have him be almost your number 2 back and slot receiver. He can be dynamic with the ball in his hands. It's just he never dominated at TCU. Beck outplayed him this past year, and just prior, he never was like the guy. So, I think he's kind of a do-all-everything. Cordell Patterson's another comp you could look at, who's more athlete than receiver, and Patterson has been at his best when he got fully moved to running back. Yeah. And a great return, and that's Williams as well. Williams is going to be a core special teamer. But what I like about him is if he gets to the right system with a great creative coach, they will find ways to use him. Mm-hmm. You put him on a Sean McVay or teams like that, they'll find ways to use him. So I'm not going to be anywhere near overweight. I don't even need to be with the field, but I will take a couple shots on him. Just because he could be the guy who has 4 or 5 receiving touchdowns, 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, a combined 900 to 1,200 yards. But yeah, he's not going to go out there and get 1,100 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. I don't see that maybe ever in his career. But he's just a guy who could get combined yardage and usage.
Yeah, no, and that's why I know as the big board first opened till now, you've kind of like you raised him up your rankings a little bit, but the bear case on him, and you have this in the article, is I'm going to take some, but he's not a guy I'm going to go overboard with. Like you said, this is probably more of a 5%er because he might just be a special teamer mainly. Yeah. That is the downside of it. And again, he's going like 205 or something like that. Yeah. So you're taking, those late swings, but he's definitely not someone like a Jaden Higgins that you want to go overweight on late. So you're taking more like, again, that 5% range. Okay. Talk about Xavier Restrepo, Miami.
Restrepo's a slot only guy. Yeah. Good floor. Landing spot
goes earlier, 160.
Yeah. Landing spot will be key because not every team, has a slot role available. So that kind of holds him back a little bit. But I think he is a very, very strong route runner, really good hands. I think teams will like him, and in the long term, I think he has a long NFL career. It's just a matter of, does the landing spot allow him to produce enough fantasy-wise as a rookie? And probably never a big touchdown guy, so that also caps his upside.
Especially on underdog, yeah.
But, I want some of them because I think he is making a push to be a starting slot on a number of teams. Kind of the way Amon-Ra St. Brown forced his way in. He doesn't have Amon-Ra's upside, but there's some of that to his game. Ty Felton, the next guy, I actually have grown to, particularly with the Senior Bowl and these post-draft events, and just looking at him more, he's a guy I'm getting more interested in.
Yeah, he has a 20th round shot. He's 239 ADP.
Yeah, he really produced this past year above Caden Prather, who's the more physically gifted receiver, but Felton's physically gifted in his own right, like 6'1", decent speed. He had 1,100 yards this past year. I like his hands. I think there's upside. And like you said, it's a 20th round shot. Give me a couple shots on a guy like that who the NFL might look. He produced in college, and the NFL might like him even more. Yeah. The next guy I mentioned.
This is the one you mentioned as the potentially really raw prospect.
This is the guy who could be the 6th receiver taken. I don't know that for sure, but he could be the first receiver taken in the 2nd round. He also could be the last receiver taken in the 2nd round, but he's probably going 2nd, 3rd round. good size, but I just think he's one of the more raw prospects. People will point to 2 years ago when he trounced Travis Hunter in that game. I have no idea. Colorado just didn't show up to that. It was a Friday night game. Somehow Stanford, I think, had more passing yards in that game than they had the rest of the year combined. But no, so Iron done it a couple times where on a big stage, but I just don't see a lot of the nuance and skill to his game. He's a guy who I think you need to develop. 3 years from now.
Yeah, you mentioned in a dynasty. He's if this was a dynasty ranking, he'd be much higher. But we're talking 2025 is the NFL season.
And I believe he might even just be a redshirt sophomore. So he's young, redshirt junior or junior at best. So anyways, I just think he's young, very raw in a lot of areas. I don't think he makes a quick jump to the NFL.
Well, and he's going after guys like, that you have ranked much higher. Like he's going 170, I believe 171. He's going way higher than guys like Jack Beck and Jaden Higgins and, Jalen Royals. He's going before these guys, and you like those guys much more. So that's why you're going to be way overweight them and not much here because you said I think he's being overdrafted in both NFL and big boards. So you won't have much exposure. And I think that's the way to kind of look at it. Because let me tell you again, see if you go 4 for 4 here, but you nailed the raw prospect with that. So many people were high on Traylon Burks and where he went in those drafts that best ball year. And then Quentin Johnson. And then last year, Xavier Legette. So it's not totally free. It's not like it's last round either. I mean, he's going 170s. So I think that's a great way to, contextualize it.
He has fallen. I think he started like 140s. So
so at least he has fallen, but I like to know which sometimes knowing which guys you're out on or is as important knowing which guys you're really in on. And again, price matters. The fact that he's going above like guys like Higgins and stuff like that is important. So Jalen Noel, another Iowa State guy going later. How are you handling him?
Yeah, we talked about him earlier.
Yeah, Senior Bowl.
He productive, good, decent skill set, and probably more floor play than ceiling, but look, I think someone on the team is going to be very lucky if they're landing him like 3rd round, maybe in 4th round.
Yeah.
I want to take some shots on him. We just took him in that big board draft we did earlier today. But he's not a guy I need to be overweight on. But like I said, these are the guys to take shots on because his floor is, I think, strong enough that he will have some usable weeks in most situations, not every, but in most situations. And if he gets a really good landing spot, then maybe he very much exceeds this area.
What's his NFL comp? Because I know he had a really strong Senior Bowl where people were impressed.
So he's another kind of like, high-end DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs type, but that's a very high-end for him. He's probably more, trying to think of a better comp, but
well, it's okay if there's not someone that you think he could be right away, because that's the whole point of this. Is that's why he's going, very end of the big boards. And even though people were really impressed with him at the Senior Bowl, like you said, likely it's going to be him producing. He could produce his rookie year, but he's more of a floor play because it's likely going to be as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that helps. That context helps. We can go through these last few pretty quickly because I don't think you're getting a ton of these. A lot of these, like we said, 11 through 20, you're not getting much of these. The 1 through 10 is where you're going to be more overweight and where regards to where they go in big boards. But you could go through these quickly. Ricky White, UNLV, Caden Brather, Maryland.
Yeah. So honestly, these next couple are all kind of the same. Give me some 19th, 20th round shots on them. Yeah. Ricky White is definitely the most interesting because you look at the way he produced at UNLV, a team that terrible quarterback play. Maybe one of the few that was worse than the guys up top. And he absolutely dominated these past 2 years. Size is good, route running, hands, all check the boxes. I want to see if the athleticism is legit, so I'll be interested to see how he runs.
Yeah.
But look, he's a guy who's always open, always producing, and every defense knew that the offense ran through him, and he still produced even with bad quarterback play. So, I'll be interested to see how the NFL looks at him. I'm guessing he's a day 3 guy, a 4th round guy.
Yeah.
But there might be more talent there.
Okay. Caden
Caden
Prather.
Prather, mentioned him a little in the Ty Felton bit, but love his size, love his speed. Never dominated at Maryland. Always Ty Felton outproduced him. Other guys outproduced him. I do think he's got that 6'3", 215, 220, probably going to run a 4.4 range. That's tough. You can't teach that, but can you unlock that is going to be the question. And as a rookie, and we just saw that with Adonai Mitchell from Texas, 6'3", ran a 4.35.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just bad quarterback play in Indianapolis. It was, he just wasn't better than Alec Pierce. He wasn't better.
I was going to say Alec Pierce massively outperformed him.
Yeah, he wasn't better than Downs or Pittman. So I don't think he would have, produced much as a rookie and on basically any team. So Prather could have some of the same issues, but look, at this point in the draft, I'm going to take some shots. If he ends up being a third round guy, you might want him. Same with Pat Bryant. Bigger guy, might be a big slot, but it kind of the poor man's version of Jaden Higgins, chain mover, red zone. As you saw, 10 touchdowns this past year. Very much a red zone threat.
Okay.
I think late third, early fourth. Take him in the 20th round a couple times. We'll see if the landing spot's right. And Ja'Cory Brooks is one of the guys who I think is being overlooked. Very similar to Isaiah Bond, both transferred away from Alabama. Brooks was honestly probably better at Alabama, and he was with Bryce Young a couple years ago versus what Bond was working with. But he got injured, banged up in 2023. This past year transferred to Louisville, 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. He has got size, good route running. He became the focal point of the Louisville passing attack. And I'm surprised he's not really on a lot of draft boards and lists because there's not a lot to question right now. The injury that he had was not something that you are concerned with. I think it was a shoulder injury. So, yeah, I think right now he's projected to go late in drafts. I'm going to be interested to see if after the combine he opens some eyes.
Yeah, you say in the article, I'm not going to draft him much right now, but if he checks boxes at the combine, I might take some shots. So that's good context. And again, a lot of these 11 through 20, so some you're not really interested in. Oh, so go ahead.
Torrey Horton, I want to mention, he did have a serious knee injury in October. Okay. Had he not been injured, he would have been much higher on this list.
Okay.
He's a very talented receiver. But yeah, it's a mid-October injury. Not sure how he's going to be able to come back. Not sure if, he loses some speed. A team, I still think he probably goes in like the 4th round of the NFL draft because the upside.
Yeah.
But this is a guy we're waiting to see what the combine says, from
because you get the medicals and stuff there, which is so important. And, you think I'm not trying to compare situations, but think about Jamison Williams. I mean, that was super late, early January, but still, and it's so sad when these guys get injured, because it does affect their draft stuff. It does affect their first year or two, in the NFL. So that's a shame. So are you you're going to wait to see the medicals and then you might take some if they're some positive. Okay.
Yeah. Some good news comes out of the combine. I'll take some shots.
Okay. Last one, Nick Nash from San Jose State.
Nick Nash, I just mentioned him because he's one of the most productive receivers in college. He's older and he is best as a route runner. I think he makes an NFL roster. I'd be shocked if he's much of a fantasy asset as a rookie, but what I will say is he needs a really strong combine. If he has that, then I'll have some interest. If not, I think he's a later day 3 guy who just kind of makes an NFL roster. If he's got a strong combine, then you look at a more experienced older receiver who's already got the route running. Maybe teams draft him in that 3rd, 4th area where you can still have fantasy value as a rookie.
Sure. So basically, and check out this article free on fanspeak.com. Check it out. We, pulled it up as Steve was going through it. I think that helped going through and then talking about where they're going ADP and then how you're handling it. A lot of those 1 through 10 guys, seem to be really want to be overweight. A lot of those 11 through 20 seems like you really want to maybe just sprinkle in, 5% or less. Some of them, maybe not much at all, like an Iron or some of those late guys. So I think that helps, to contextualize everything. It's certainly helping me as I'm going through these big boards and war rooms and everything. Just a fun game to round it out. Who do you think, when it's all said and done, for the big board, not, for the draft season when we actually know the landing spots, but for the big board when we don't know the landing spots? And I know we still need to get through the combine and pro days and all that stuff. ADP considered, who do you think you'll have the most of when it's all said and done, like percentage wise? Which rookie receiver is going to be at the top for you?
I think it'll probably be Luther Burden.
Okay, gotcha.
Because I view him that 2 reasons. The ADP is strong. I think he should be.
He was so what, 80s, 70s, or
late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah,
I think he should be closer to Tet, maybe only 10 spots behind Tet. So I think you're getting some value there, and I think he likely ends up with one of the better landing spots. Just going in that
second half of the draft, playoff
late
teams,
first round, all sorts of playoff teams, all sorts of good quarterbacks.
And playoff teams usually have good offensive minds too, which is very important to how these guys are used, especially early in their career. So Luther Burden, you heard it here first, guys. I'm going to be drafting more. We just drafted him in our big board, our live draft that we just did. Watch that. That's on the channel. Be sure to make sure you're subscribed to the Fanspeak Network. Again, plenty of live drafts, plenty of these strategy shows. Now leading all the way up till Labor Day, when all is said and done for basketball season. We're going to have a ton of basketball content each and every week, both pre-draft and after the draft. Steve, final thoughts, and then we'll get out of here.
No, like I said, I think you treat this draft class appropriately. Definitely not good as last year, not as good as 22, but better than 23. So try and treat it kind of like that in between. And I think you'll be rewarded. And of course, Travis Hunter is just the ultimate wild card of this.
Yeah. But like we said, let's wait and see. We're taking him because the bull case is he's, a receiver at a decent clip, and we're getting him, 70 spots past Tech McMillan. So, we're taking a lot, and then we'll keep adjusting the news that we find out at the combine and as we go through this draft process. So, no, this was super helpful for me. Hopefully it's super helpful for you. Check out the quarterback tight end show. Check out the running back show. We definitely like a lot of running backs and tight ends, and been drafting a lot of certain of those rookies. So check out those shows. These shows have been key to helping me in my big board draft process, and hopefully it's helping you too. So for Steve, I'm Meg, and we'll see you next time.